wage increases and other concessions from the three automakers could signal that organized labor is still an economic force to be reckoned with and accelerate a recent wave of organizing. But there are also pitfalls. A prolonged strike could undermine the three established U.S. automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram, and send the politically crucial Midwest into recession. Ken Paxton, the embattled Attorney General of Texas, survived an impeachment vote in the state Senate over the weekend, but the case is far from behind him. The U.S. Justice Department still has an open investigation over many of the same allegations of corruption and abuse of office. And in October, Mr. Paxton's lawyers will be in court with state prosecutors to set a trial date for his pending indictment on 2 counts of securities fraud. And this is an 8-year-old case that the senators did not take up directly in their acquittal vote on Saturday. Rudolph Giuliani, America's mayor, well, he is, as you know, already under criminal indictment and at risk of losing his law license for his efforts to keep Donald Trump in office after the 2020 election. Giuliani is now being sued by his own lawyer. The lawyer, Robert Costello, who had been leading Mr. Giuliani's defense against an onslaught of legal woes, signed onto the lawsuit brought by his firm to recover more than $1.3 million in unpaid legal fees. The development deals a stunning blow to Giuliani as he nears a financial breaking point as a result of his representation of Donald Trump. As the auto workers' strike against the three nations' biggest automakers continues, numerous Democrats in Michigan and around the country have expressed concern as Biden's likely rival in next year's election, former President Donald Trump, tries to woo union voters and weaken a crucial Democratic constituency by making his own visit to a strike site. Several members of Congress, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senators Bernie Sanders and John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, have joined a UAW picket line since the strike began at midnight on Friday morning. Democrats want Biden to go to the picket line to underscore the party's differences on labor issues. Voting rights advocates say a Texas law intended to curb fraud is impeding people with disabilities, older voters, and non-English speakers' rights to vote. The new voting law became a priority for Governor Greg Abbott after Donald Trump claimed he lost the 2020 election because of election fraud, a claim that, as you know, has been discounted by many judges around the country. Nevertheless, Governor Abbott threatened to call a special session of the legislature until lawmakers sent him the voting bill to sign. The leaders of New York City and New York State, where officials say the arrival of migrants has set off a humanitarian crisis, seem to turn on each other this week after the state sent a scathing letter accusing the city of resisting its help and being slow to act. In the letter, a lawyer representing Governor Kathy Hochul faulted Mayor Eric Adams' management of New York's migrant crisis in sharp terms, punctuating the appearance of city-state harmony that the two leaders have spent much of their tenures cultivating. More on the immigrant crisis in New York in Hour 2. And also in news today, the far-right Republicans have tried their hand at governing this week, cutting a government funding deal with center-right lawmakers in hopes of breaking a logjam of their own making as Congress lurches towards a potential shutdown on September 30. But in a twist, several rank-and-file ultra-conservative lawmakers blasted the deal as too weak. Now it's at risk of falling apart. The deal would fund the government until October 31st, buy more time for a long-term measure, while imposing an 8% cut to domestic programs, with the exceptions for the Pentagon and veterans. This deal would also include a swath of restrictive immigration policies that are popular on the right. We're going to keep watching this space. You are listening and watching Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm joined by two of my regular contributors, Dr. Omekongo Dibinga, a professional lecturer at American University, and Dr. John Smiley, also a professor of race at the City University. And in hour two, we go deep and we dig behind the headlines on some of today's biggest stories with big headlines, others which have big impact. Today, as I said, we're going to be talking about the New York immigration crisis and its larger implications on the congressional races next year, as well as the presidential election. New York City's mayor, Eric Adams, is blaming this crisis on President Joe Biden. New York State Governor Kathy Hochul is blaming the crisis on Eric Adams. And all of this has Democrats finger pointing and fighting with each other. And it has Democratic strategists worried that this inner fight is going to spill over into next year's critical races and could cause us to lose the House and potentially the White House. As they say, immigration is the new abortion. In hour two, we talked to a state representative from New York who has intimate knowledge about what's going on in the state. And we bring on an immigration attorney who's really at fault and what can the U.S. government, i.e. Joe Biden versus Congress versus the Senate, do, and what powers does someone like the governor of New York have as it relates to immigration policies? Big conversation about immigration, which we know is going to be on the ballot next year. But before I bring on my guests, here's what I'm thinking in real time. Now, everybody knows I am unequivocally pro-choice. I believe that women should have the right to make whatever reproductive right or reproductive choices they choose as it relates to their bodies. And no way should a Supreme Court or a state court or anyone in the state legislature or even the U.S. Congress should have the decision-making power over women's bodies. But with that being said, I just want to say to pro-lifers, y'all just got played. And you got played by your main man, Donald Trump. Now, we know Donald Trump, his opinions change daily. He changes his opinions with the wind. But if you have a chance to watch his interview with NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday, Trump, again, made statements that you don't know if they're true for just that night or if these are really his beliefs. But he was emphatic in stating that the point of overturning Roe v. Wade was not to make abortion permanently illegal, unconstitutional in the United States. He says, to the contrary, overturning it was designed to give pro-lifers the chance to negotiate with abortion rights advocates. Really? Y'all know that's crazy. Pro-lifers and pro-choice advocates fundamentally disagree on women's bodies' autonomy and the rights to make decisions about abortions. Pro-lifers will never, ever agree with pro-choice advocates, and pro-lifers believe that their lifelong goal of having Roe v. Wade overturned, they achieved that goal. They didn't back the overturning of Roe so that they could go sit down at the negotiation table. This isn't Celebrity Apprentice where you get to sit around a table and Donald Trump decides who's got to go and who gets to stay. So I say to you pro-lifers, y'all better be careful, because if you continue to support Donald Trump and he is elected to office, he is not going to do what you expect, i.e. try to nationalize by federal law the ban on abortions. In fact, he went further. He said in this interview on NBC Meet the Press that the heartbeat bill that pro-lifers love, this is a bill that was signed into law by his chief rival, Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, he says that bill was a, quote, terrible thing, a terrible mistake. Donald Trump's words. But again, for pro-lifers, that bill was what they fought for decades. That's what they wanted from the overturning of Roe, is for states to then even go further and ban abortions, even in the case of incest and rape, and to make it literally impossible for women to exercise any rights over their bodies. So again, when someone calls the fulfillment of your dreams a terrible thing, perhaps he's just not that into you. Pro-lifers, wake up. Y'all got a choice to make. Either you elect Donald Trump, knowing that he is not going to support your beliefs on abortion. He's not going to initiate or in any way try to create a law that bans abortion across this country. And in fact, he may sit down with folks like me, the pro-choicers, and try to figure out how abortion can be legal in some states. So again, word of advice, y'all been played. When we come forward, more on KBLA Talk 1580, more with today's trending news with my expert contributors. Stay with us.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest spot,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This
We are back, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin, and this is Hour One, and we are tracking today's breaking and trending news with my experts. And I think I spoke about Dr. Calvin John Smiley. He is a professor of sociology at Hunter College, City University of New York, and Dr. Omekongo Dibinga is here joining us. He is a senior lecturer at American University. Welcome back to both of you. Let's talk about this strike that's going on in Michigan. There is concern in the Democratic Party that the workers may have overplayed their hands. They're asking for a 40% increase in pay. Now, they say they're doing that because they say the executives have gotten a 40% increase in their executive level pay, which we know is in the multi-millions of dollars. But folks are looking at the strike saying, well, if these strikers are successful, maybe that'll energize the writers and actors who are on strike. But if they are not, it could weaken the position and power of labor unions. How are you thinking about this strike, Dr. Dibinga?
Well, I feel at the end of the day, we have to do whatever is possible to support the workers, because really when it comes down to it, it's not just the auto workers. I mean, especially coming out of COVID, we have seen that so many different industries are demanding a better quality of life, and they deserve that. And so I really hope that the workers haven't put themselves back themselves into some type of hole. I like what I see what many of the people out there striking are saying. These CEOs have been making billions and billions of profits over the years, but it's only when we start demanding more as the workers, as the people at the bottom, that all of a sudden people want to start talking about recessions and crises and bankruptcy and all of these other types of things. And that's really just not fair. At the end of the day, and then you talk about, they're also protesting the multi-tier pay system. We have to work a certain amount of 20 something years in some cases to get a certain level of pay that many people are never going to receive. And so I know that all of us who are just, regular consumers of news may not know all of the intricacies of the strike, but we followed it enough to know that these workers demand their demands, they need to be met, and they deserve better. Because at the end of the day, what they're asking for is very minimal compared to what the cost goes into actually making an automobile. So they deserve better, and I'm all for it, and I hope that it continues.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm looking right now at the Washington Post. There's an article that says the UAW might be demanding too big a slice of a soon-to-shrink pie. To your point, when workers demand to be paid higher wages, then all of a sudden, oh my God, the market is shrinking. Oh, the revenue is shrinking. I have a good friend who works at one of the autos, not one of these that's striking. And she talked about the cuts that were made internally, staff that was let go, projects that were very meaningful in the company that were shelved. And she said at the same time, their top executive salaries continue to go up, up, up. So we know, Dr. Smiley, we are a capitalist society. The name of the game is profit, profit, profit. And if you're at the top of one of these corporations and you are responsible in some way for making that profit, you are well compensated at most companies. However, how do we balance that? I'm a CEO, so I believe CEOs should be fairly compensated. But how do we balance that with the workers' needs also to be fairly compensated? And we find ourselves, whether it's the writers and the big studios who are balking at the writers wanting to make a living wage. And now, these articles coming out suggesting that the workers in the auto industry, again, are asking for too much. No one focusing on those huge salaries of the executives.
Yeah, I mean, to gently push back, on the idea that CEOs need to be compensated fairly, that's subjective and always interpreted by them as that they need to have, 10 X or more than the workers. And in many cases, these CEOs aren't producing anything. And in more cases, it's not like they went from being the janitor who moved up the ranks and know it. These are folks who oftentimes already come from privileged positions and come in, don't really understand the day-to-day of what a worker does, and or knows even that experience of what it means to be a low wage or minimum wage worker. So I think that the ask is not outrageous from the workers, 40%. I think that they should probably be asking for more, actually, because we all know that they're not going to get 40%, but that's where the negotiation starts. So if they only started at 10%, that's going to go down. So, there's a strategy there. And, news media, things like Washington Post and others, they're owned by the billionaires, the Bezos and stuff like that. So, we also have to look at them with a grain of salt of what they're going to put out in the press. I would just say that strikes are hard and difficult decisions, right? People don't intend to go on strike. People don't like to go on strike. It's a calculated decision because workers are going to potentially lose out on pay, lose out on their jobs. So unions come to these decisions with a lot of thought in them. So, this was not just done on a whim. I was watching the Teamster president talk about that. They've been trying to get to the table with these CEOs, and for months they were just being balked and balked and balked. And eventually, if you're not going to be listened to, you kind of have to do something that makes them come to the table.
Yeah, and let's be clear. My point about CEOs getting compensated fairly, again, like I said, and likewise, workers should be compensated fairly. My point, though, was really more about our capitalist society, right? So capitalism is what we're talking about, and we're not a socialist country, and we're not a country where the workers are ever going to make equal to or even on par with what these top executives make. But there is, I think, a breaking point, and in many industries, they've reached that. I mean, the wages are just too low for people to even support themselves, to buy, basic goods and services, to pay for basic goods and services. Someone sent me a picture. In some parts of the country, gas is now $6.80, $6.90. I went to the gas pump. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, there's been this big jump. I put like $116, and it still was, the meter was ticking. I was like, okay, that's enough. Like, okay, wow. That's all the gas I'm prepared to pay for today. So, I mean, how do you do that, right? If you're making $18 an hour or $20 an hour and you live in one of these big cities where your gas is $6 plus, and then you have rental expenses and car insurance and all the other things that's required to live. So I am very much in favor of the workers in the UAW, the auto workers, the writers. I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA myself. So the folks at SAG that are, on strike, enough is enough. And I think even though it doesn't have to be on par, there needs to be a greater sense of some kind of recognition of the huge gap, and to continue to tell workers, we don't have the money, or the pie is shrinking, or, sales are down while those salaries of the executives keep going up is patently unfair. Well, let's talk about Biden, though. Omekongo, should he go? Hakeem Jeffries went. John Fetterman went to the picket line. Is that a visual we should see? Is President Joe Biden with a cap on and his aviator shades and walking the picket line with those workers?
Unfortunately, no. He can't go unless he's invited to the table. I believe he was going to have a member of his team go down and meet, but it switched to a Zoom thing because, Donald Trump is now talking about wanting to go to auto workers. And, Donald Trump, he just campaigns and makes promises. But Biden, as the executive, as the leader, the person who said he wants to be the most pro-union president ever, which he has been, he can't make it seem. It's sort of like when presidents go to a natural disaster site and they have to figure out the logistics and not drawing away resources and drawing away attention. I feel it's the same thing. I think if he's invited down there, he absolutely will go and be there in a heartbeat. And I feel like if he is invited, he can be productive. But I think right now, particularly if the members of the union are not saying he needs to come down there, he needs to just step away and do his best to engage them from a distance.
What do you think about that, Professor Smiley? You think he should go? You make a good point, Dr. Dibinga. If he hasn't been invited, he could be rejected. Who knows? So he's got to be careful about what he walks into. But obviously, his office could put out some feelers and let them know that he's interested in coming. And I would suspect that an invitation would be forthcoming. Do you think it helps or hurts to have him show up at the picket line?
Yeah, it's a tough decision. I mean, I before Dr. Dibinga spoke, I was like, he should be there, but I do agree that there is a thing that if he goes uninvited, there could be bad publicity on that end. But if he doesn't go, but doesn't have the right optics out there, this is something that the GOP and Donald Trump could use against him. So it really seems like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I would still urge the White House to try to get there or try to do something that shows that they're in solidarity. I'm sure Joe Biden knows some of these CEOs. Sometimes he needs to be maybe playing a more of the behind the scenes role and saying, you got to sit at the table. You have to talk with these folks. You got to figure this out, right? We can't just have this happening.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a tough one. I don't know. Part of me, again, feels like you, that he should be there, particularly Donald Trump. We know next week when Republicans are at the Reagan Library doing their second GOP debate, he won't be on that debate stage. He's made it very clear. He's going to go to Michigan, go to Detroit in particular, try to pack a room with 500, auto workers and other union members. Some, I think they said plumbers and others. Types of union members, to give the optic that he's the guy standing with the workers. And we know that's far from true. But again, visuals are significant, and people see visuals and, they assume that the visual is a representation of something very accurate. And we know it's far from the truth. So, I don't know. We don't have any advice to give Biden on this other than to talk to your folks. I like your idea of try to work as much as you can behind the scenes to get this close. We don't want to go into next year with imagine the writers and the actors and the auto workers. We can't have like America's, infrastructure, particularly in Hollywood and then across the country in autos on strike in an election year. So a lot of work has to be done. When we come forward, talk about these Republicans who tried their hand at governing. And guess what? Realize very quickly, it is not that easy. And if you haven't done it, you don't have any muscle memory. We talk about what's happening with our budget, and it's going to be a government shutdown. We are racing towards one very quickly. And what is happening in New York, and why are they all pointing the fingers at each other? Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader. Follow 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 the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest spot.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on? Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation in scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rec spot.
We are back, and in this hour, we are tracking today's breaking and trending news. In hour two, we're going to be talking about the infighting that's happening in New York City between the mayor, the governor, and even the president of the United States. Who is really responsible for what the mayor of New York calls a immigration crisis? But first, let's talk, Dr. Dibinga, about far-right Republicans. They got a rude awakening this week as they try to govern. That's not something the Republican Party is known for. They're known for being the party of opposition. They spend more time opposing legislation than actually drafting legislation and whipping the votes. Maybe they have a newfound respect for Nancy Pelosi because we know she was the queen of, whipping votes and getting her party to stick together on big, important bills. Where is this Republican Party going under Kevin McCarthy, who has absolutely positively no control over them? And now you have the far-right Republicans fighting with the ultra-right Republicans.
I mean, it would be comical if it wasn't so dangerous in terms of what they're doing to the country. I mean, this is what we get when you get a man who wanted to do anything to be speaker, that he basically gave these extreme Republicans the opportunity to basically get rid of him. Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're actively going to work to remove him, even if he just has a CR, even if he just has a continuing resolution, they're going to look at that as a betrayal. But this is what you get. And yeah, he dared them last week to file the motion. But the fact of the matter is like they're more effective with their bluster than with their policy. They don't have the ability to come together. And through this whole conversation, nobody's actually hearing from, moderate Republicans, veteran Republicans, people who may not consider themselves on the extreme, because they have no power. They have no say. They're afraid of getting primaried and having Trump go at them. And so we are going to be in a perpetual state of almost being at a shutdown or near a shutdown deadline. This is going to happen as for the foreseeable future with this so-called leadership in control right now. And whoever comes after McCarthy, if they actually get rid of him, it's going to be the same thing. If this is not more of an impetus for us who are supporting Democrats or who may lean independent, to get out there and actually get real leadership in there who's actually going to make something happen. Look, we just came out of a segment talking about shutdowns, just came out of a segment talking about strikes and auto workers and the rioting. And now we're going to throw government workers into that as well. And there are people, the Matt Gaetzes of the world, who want this. They want it to happen. These people are basically like nihilists. They want it all destroyed. They feel like they're going to be all right. And we have to, and on top of that, they're fighting for a bill that's never going to get past the Senate. So really at the end of the day, it's time for the mature heads to step up, but they don't exist in the party anymore.
And something that I read, I'm sure both of you saw this, is a dichotomy of Marjorie Taylor Greene. She came close to losing her election last time by about 536 votes. So there's a Democrat that's coming for her next year, and she knows it. So this article said when she goes home to Colorado, she is a perfectly normal person. She's talking about issues that her constituents want to hear about, things that are going to improve their lives, things that impact, their quality of life in terms of the climate, the economy. Not the flamethrower. And she admitted that this persona of flamethrower is one that she takes on specifically and exclusively for attention in Washington, D.C. Now, I don't know if she thinks her voters are stupid and they're going to accept that admission from her, but a lot of what she's doing, she admitted, it's just for theater, it's just for attention, it's just to be a thorn in the side of, as you said, these moderate Republicans who are sitting back watching the chaos, knowing that there was no deal making with these ultra conservative. There's no there's no reasoning, I guess is the word I'm trying to think of. Reasoning with these people. They are unreasonable. They are illogical. And as you said, they will burn the whole house down to make a point. And the point is that they want to kill Kevin McCarthy. They don't want him to be successful. Their arms were twisted to even vote for him as the leader. Where are you thinking, Professor Smiley? Where does this go? Because as Dr. Dibinga said, this is serious stuff. This involves all of our lives, not just theirs.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly that there's this kind of they're unfit to serve, right? And they show us time and time again. And at some point, the voters have to wake up and kind of vote them out. Because, I always find the kind of interesting thing about when we have government shutdowns is it affects workers. You know who it doesn't affect? It doesn't affect the people in Congress. They still get their salary. They still get their health coverage. So while their inaction affects millions of people across the country, they go on living well. And so, we see, and as you just brought up, this idea that it's a persona, we're in a moment. I don't know how long this moment will last, but we're in a moment of WWE style politics, right? Where it is the theater, it is the kind of how many clicks can I make in terms of the clickbait to be in the headlines. There was a point where during Trump's administration, I kind of took a step back and said, how much of the shenanigans are people exposing him or him just putting it out there through third channels because it keeps him in the headlines in a way that people are talking about all of these nonsense things, and he's doing all of his other stuff kind of under the guise of people aren't covering that, major outlets aren't covering that. So to see the Taylor Greens or the Lauren Bobitts doing nonsense and that becoming the headline continues to show us that our major media needs to maybe take a step back from that and focus on the other things, as well as putting other people in positions of power.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned, Professor Smiley, about the Washington Post being owned by Bezos and, billionaires. There's an article here that says, and it just caught my attention, and I read it so quickly, I thought it said the opposite of what it actually says. It says that Trump hits new poll highs with Black and Hispanic voters. What to make of it? And it goes on in the article to say that he is now polling at 20% with African-American voters, and that no Republican in modern history has ever had those kinds of numbers. And then this is the part that really makes me say, I don't know about this. They say it's not just Donald Trump, that they did a poll with X number of other Republicans, 7 or 8 other Republicans, and that those Republicans are polling 20% and 45%, 20% with Black voters, 45% with Hispanic voters. What do you both make of this article in the Washington Post today that Donald Trump and other Republicans are polling that high with Black voters?
I think it's a lie. It's that other Republicans part that makes me skeptical. Like, really, what is Boebert? 20% with Black folks? Is Taylor Greene? Like, who is it? Is it Vivek? Like, who are they talking about? And this is the challenge that we're going to see. It goes to Dr. Smiley's point about the mainstream media needed to get their house in order, because between now and election day, it's going to be more stories about Black people leaving the Democratic Party, specifically Black men. They're going to work to make that divide, even though in the last election it was proven to not be true. Black women are number 1 in terms of voting Democrat. Black men are number 2. There's not another group between those two. So they're going to do that. They're going to talk about Biden's age, and they're going to talk about these polls. That's the trifecta that keeps the stories going so they can keep Trump in the news as well. And I think that we have to be more sophisticated, those of us who are out here doing this work and speaking and using these platforms to really call it out, because this is the drama that they want for ratings. And quite frankly, I think many in mainstream media wouldn't have a problem if Trump came back, because he'd be great for the ratings, even though he'd be horrible for America, as Les Moonves said from CBS, formerly of CBS.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. So the number, going back to the article, 7 2024 Republicans against Biden, and just about every GOP candidate was nearly at 20%. They said, this article says Tim Scott, the Black senator from South Carolina, did the worst. He's at 15. The worst is 15%.
Wow.
And just real quick.
Hold that thought, Professor Smiley. Let's all let that sink in. And when we come forward, we are going to unload on this poll, which I think we all take issue with. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, this is LA City Councilman Curran Price, inviting you to the 28th Annual Central Avenue Jazz Fest on September the 23rd from 11 to 7 p.m. For nearly 3 decades, the Central Avenue Jazz Festival has paid homage to the legendary Central Avenue and its influence on jazz history. Jazz, blues, and Latin jazz will be featured on 3 stages of music. Co-headlining are Hubert Laws with special guest Eloise Laws and the Billy Childs Quartet featuring Sean Jones. The day includes plenty of food, merchants, and 4 pavilions focused on youth programming, art, health and wellness, and public resources. Parking is limited, so Metro and Rideshare are recommended. Hubert Laws with special guest Eloise Laws and the Billy Childs Quartet featuring Sean Jones.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 15
and public resources. For more information, visit centralavjazzfest.com. Central Ave.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? But getting help is. If you have stimulant use disorder, you, your family, and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
Light, Don Kennedy, to name a few. Take a listen to what Justin Grant, Community Development Lead at Chase's Advancing Black Pathway, let's see what he had to say.
So I'm Justin Grant. I lead community development and national partnerships for JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Pathway strategy. And so we're focused on strengthening the economic foundation of Black communities, and we're making targeted investments in programs like the Advancing Black Wealth Tour to help us get our tools and resources out to the community to drive sustained impact over time.
So when it comes to Black and Brown people, it sounds like Chase is making it their personal responsibility, not only to facilitate these events, but to educate and provide resources. So, Mr. Grant, I have to ask, what does wealth building look like for the individual?
It's home ownership. It's having that freedom to be able to start your own business and create jobs in your community. And it's having that long-term plan towards retirement, having that vision for what you want your life to be, and you have the resources to actually live it.
I'm Aisha Cairo. Thanks.
Get off the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk.
Trump and just about every other Republican that's breathing is polling at 20% amongst Black voters and 42% amongst Latinos. And then whoever wrote it obviously knew it was going to be controversial and probably not believe. So they said, well, wait a minute. You know, we didn't just look at one poll. We looked at an average of 5 polls, and then we verified, you know, the voters who were in the polls to make sure they had actually voted. And they went on to try to, again, legitimize this argument. Someone else in the article said, I think Nate Cohen says, not likely that 20% of Black voters are going to vote for Trump. More likely that Black voters aren't motivated and won't come out and vote at all, which could also be a problem for Democrats. So what are you thinking, Professor Smiley, about this article?
Yeah,
numbers.
Before we went to break, one of the things, and again, I haven't seen this, and I think you clarified some of it, but, you know, you always have to sometimes take polls with a grain of salt, right? We saw Trump was not even on the, you know, when in his first election in the primary, he was always polling last, and look, he became president. So polls are not always something that we can always believe, as well as who are they polling is another kind of key factor, right? If I only poll Black folks in Brooklyn, New York, about where they like to live, and then generalize and say, oh, all Black people like to live in Brooklyn, that's a little bit of a misleading kind of stat I'm putting out there. But, you know, to that end, are there Black folks who are either unmotivated by the Democrats or moving to a more conservative stance? Sure. I mean, you know, Trump did do, in terms of raw numbers, better with Black men and other minoritized folks, for the exception of Black women, in the last election. But I don't think that this is some big pendulum swing that we're seeing, but yet they try to make a mountain out of a molehill. But again, I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier, that a lot of this is for the divisiveness, for the clickbait, to try to get people arguing in the Twitter comments. And then you put out particular key caricatures, right? So it was the Silk and Diamond. It is the Candace Owens. You know, I don't know what happened to that sheriff who used to wear the big cowboy hat, but you put key or isolated individual Black people and then say, well, they're speaking for all Black people, and then that kind of in an attempt to try to metastasize that idea that look, Black people are shifting ideologically, when that's not happening when we look at the actual vote.
Well, one good thing I think from this article and these alleged polls is perhaps it motivates Democrats to say, look, we obviously don't believe these polls, but we don't want to rest on our laurels, right? We don't want to take Black voters for granted. We don't want to take Latino voters for granted. We do want to be out making the case for, why in this election in 2024, everyone needs to vote and what's at stake. I guess I just find it hard to believe that the motivation, yes, I'm hearing the lack of motivation. That I'm not at all concerned about. I mean, I'm not oblivious to the fact that there are people who are very apathetic. And we have that in every election. What I'm not hearing are people saying, because I'm upset with the Democrats, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. I'm just not hearing that, even with people who are very, very angry. More likely than not, like I said, I'm hearing people say, I voted the last time, I didn't get what I wanted. What does it matter? And they just are not interested in the election. And it's early. And I haven't written those people off. I think we still have an opportunity to engage those people, to bring them back in, and to make this election not about Joe Biden's age, but about the issues. I mean, the issues, either whether you like Joe Biden or not, the abortion, we've seen how energized young people are around abortion, which is why Donald Trump is now making a calculated risk that it's better for him not to stand with the pro-lifers, because he assumes he's going to get them anyhow, right? Yeah. He says they're not going to vote for Joe Biden, so he can offend them and, play games with them about why Roe was overturned, because they're his base. And then he can pretend with the rest of the world that he's not a hardcore, anti-abortion candidate, and talk bad about DeSantis and the other Republicans who are. And I predict this, Dr. Dibinga, on the debate stage next week, Vivek Ramaswamy, who, patterns himself after Trump. Let's see what he has to now say, and all of those candidates, because that's going to be a question. I'm sure he won't be on the debate stage, but what do you suspect they say when the, moderator says, well, Donald Trump on Meet the Press says he's not interested in a federal ban. Nikki Haley has been saying that. She's gotten a lot of pushback. But what do you think this causes some of those other candidates to say about abortion?
I think this is an opportunity for them. I'm not trying to give them any real advice, but it's a real opportunity for them to double down. There was an article that came out that talked about or a news story about how Trump's losing some of his, favor with people who are part of the evangelical community. And what did you see with Mike Pence? Mike Pence came out today or yesterday and said he supports the Alabama Senator Tuberville's stance as it relates to abortion care and the military and So that was amazing to hear somebody who could be president who supports what Tuberville is doing and harming the military, but I think he did that specifically because of what Trump did. And so in the next debate, this gives them an opportunity to really show how anti-abortion they really are, and they see an opening as it relates to possibly getting some of these evangelicals. So that's what I expect to see.
Oh, so you think that some of Trump's MAGA base could peel off based on his now very public statement about not being a pro-lifer, and that Mike Pence is trying to move into that lane and capture some of those voters who would have otherwise been with Trump?
I absolutely believe that. In the last debate, you saw people like Tim Scott saying, I'll sign whatever has the strictest measure that gets to my desk. A lot of them were very vague about it. Nikki Haley was pretty direct about it. But now they see an opening. We got the people who are MAGA violent extremists who are going to support him because they're racist and ignorant. But the evangelicals, is almost a little bit different. And that's like their single voter issue. Just like one of us may vote on school choice or whatever, abortion is their thing. And so I feel like you're definitely going to see a harder stance, because these guys have gone nowhere in the polls since the last debate. This is an opportunity for them to kind of move up a little bit.
What do you think, Professor Smiley? You think we see everyone racing to be the most pro-life candidate on that stage next week in Orange County?
Yeah, I mean, why not? This is their chance to again try to kind of bump against the king, so to say, of the Republicans. But I think, as you said, Areva, this was a strategic calculation by Trump, because this is not the issue that's going to tip the scales that he's going to lose the majority of his primary vote right now. So he can lose some of those voters and still remain top dog. I would just go back real quick to what we were saying earlier about the Democrats. I think this is also a great time for the Democrats to capitalize in this kind of cultural war debate and really put it out there that this is a vote for a woman's choice, for reproductive justice. And this is where I think the Democrats sometimes fumble, is that they get kind of bogged down in like trying to appeal to Black or women voters in a kind of weird way, right? I always go back to the now infamous, I'll say, Nancy Pelosi and others taking the knee with the kente cloth, right? Black folks didn't need that, right? What we need is legislation and policy that makes sure that women's reproductive justice is protected, particularly since we know that Black women's reproductive justice is at most at stake here. So that's where Democrats should really try to shine in these next couple of months, of saying, this is what we're actually going to do to protect this if you vote for us.
Yeah, I totally agree. We got to jump into these culture wars and make it very clear which side we are. I'm sure you both saw the optics. Our vice president is on a college tour. She was at Hampton University. The lines were just, insane. The enthusiasm was over the top. The students were just so excited. So you see that visual. Those are Black folks. Those are Black voting folks. And then you read an article like this and you say, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Mm-hmm. And again, like I said, I talk to a lot of folks. I'm in contact with a lot of people, and I'm not hearing Black folks defecting to the Republican Party. Yeah. 7 of them, including Donald Trump. Definitely, we have an enthusiasm issue that we've got to address, and I think we have plenty of time to do so. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Dr. Dibinga. Again, he has written a new book called Lives About Black People. And Dr. Smiley, thank you. He also has a book out, and it's called Purgatory: Citizenship, Reentry, Race, and Abolition. Make sure you support them, because they are supporting Areva Martin in real time. And it is always my pleasure to spend an hour with both of you when we come forward. More of this infighting in New York about immigration, who's at fault, and how do we get to a solution so that this doesn't impact the 2024 election when we come forward. KBLA Talk Radio.
I'm young, gifted, and black.
KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of Black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of Black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon